She had washed strangers' linens for so long that the men of the village no longer saw a woman, only a pair of hands scrubbing fabric in the river. But when that man arrived and looked at her for the first time, something shifted. He didn't see the patched rags she wore. He saw something no one else could see. Have you ever felt invisible? So invisible that people look right through you as if you were made of glass. Evelyn knew that feeling well. Every day she walked the dirt roads of the village carrying bundles of dirty laundry, and the men would avert their eyes. The women whispered when she passed. To those people, she was just the ragged widow, the woman who had lost everything and lived on crumbs. But this story happened in the heartland of Missouri in 1891, in a small settlement called Oakhaven, and it proved that sometimes a single glance is enough to change an entire destiny. Before we continue, I have a special request. If you are watching this story right now, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Write down your city, your state, where you're from. I love knowing that these stories reach so many different places. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next stories. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring more moving tales to you. Now let's get back to Evelyn's story. 3 years earlier, Evelyn still had a full name that people pronounced with respect. Evelyn Wright was married to Thomas, a farmhand for a prosperous landowner in the region. They lived in a simple but dignified cottage at the back of the property. Thomas was a strong man with an easy smile, who woke before the sun and returned after sunset, with hands dirty from the soil, but a heart that was light. Evelyn tended the house, took in sewing work, and cultivated a small herb garden that perfumed the entire yard. They didn't have much, but they had enough. They had each other. Evelyn was beautiful back then, 25 years old. Dark brown hair that shone when let down, eyes that seemed to hold deep thoughts, delicate hands that did not yet know the wounds of the river stones. She wore simple but clean dresses, always well pressed, always with a touch of lace she had sewn herself. She had an upright posture, a gentle smile, a voice that was soft but firm when needed. Thomas used to say he had married a lady, even though he was just a common laborer. But fate has cruel ways of turning the page. It was March of 1888. The rainy season had been particularly harsh that year, flooding crops, swelling the creeks, turning the earth treacherous. Thomas went out on a grey morning to mend a fence on the property line near a steep ravine. Evelyn prepared lunch as she always did, wrapped it in a clean cloth and waited. The lunch grew cold. The afternoon passed. The sun began to dip, staining the sky orange and red. When they found Thomas, it was already pitch dark. The earth had given way beneath his feet. He fell into the ravine and struck his head on a rock. He died there alone, while Evelyn was still waiting with the wrapped lunch on the table. Evelyn's world collapsed in that instant. The landowner, a practical businessman, gave her 3 days to vacate the cottage. He needed the housing for the new hand, who was already on his way. Evelyn had no close family. Her parents had died years before. She was an only child, with no uncles or cousins in the area. The few dollars she and Thomas had managed to save were spent on a simple burial. There was almost nothing left. That was how Evelyn Wright became just Evelyn. Later, not even that. She became the widow. Then the ragamuffin. Then the invisible woman. She managed to rent a tiny room at the back of Mr. Abernathy's general store. He was an elderly man who took pity on her. It was a damp room, windowless, with an old cot and a trunk made of worm-eaten wood. It smelled of mold and kerosene, but it was a roof. Evelyn accepted it with the dignity she still had left. To survive, she offered to wash clothes. She charged very little, less than any other washerwoman in town, because she knew no one would trust work to a desperate woman if she asked for a fair price. The women of the village accepted her services not out of kindness, but out of thrift. Evelyn washed cheaper, so they brought their dirty bundles and threw them on the floor of her room like one throws food to a dog. Evelyn's beautiful dresses were sold one by one to buy flour, beans, a bit of molasses. She was left with only 2 old dresses that she patched constantly, patches upon patches, faded fabrics, stained, torn at the elbows and hems. Her hair, once shiny and well-kept, became dull. Without money for good soap, she washed herself with the same harsh lye soap she used on the clothes. Her hands, once delicate, became swollen, cracked, with deep calluses from scrubbing fabrics against the river stones, and the men of the village stopped looking at her. In the beginning, some still cast glances of pity, but pity soon turns into indifference. Evelyn became part of the landscape like the stones on the path or the crooked trees by the roadside. She walked through the streets carrying bundles of laundry on her head, and the men didn't even shift their gaze anymore. They simply didn't see her. To them, she ceased to exist as a woman. She was just a function, hands that washed, a back that carried, nothing more. The women were worse. They whispered when she passed. "Poor thing," some said. "What a waste," said others. "She used to be pretty," they commented. "Now look at her. She's turned into a rag just like the clothes she washes." And they laughed. They laughed, that malicious laugh that self-assured people use to crush those who are down. Evelyn learned to walk with her head down. She learned not to answer when they treated her poorly. She learned to accept the crumb, the penny, the insult disguised as a favor. She learned that her dignity was worth nothing in the cruel market of life. So she tucked that dignity into a deep place inside her chest, where no one could see or step on it, and kept surviving day after day. Every dawn, she woke before the sun rose. She gathered the bundles of dirty laundry that piled up in the corner of the fetid room. She carried everything to the creek that cut through the west side of the village, where the flat stones were good for washing. The walk took 20 minutes. Her feet, bare because she had no money for new shoes and the old ones had holes too large to mend, stepped on the earth still cold from the night. In winter, the frozen ground hurt. In summer, the stones on the path burned at midday when she returned. The river was her refuge and her prison. There, kneeling on the stones, with cold water running through her fingers, Evelyn spent 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. She scrubbed dingy sheets. She wrung out heavy work shirts. She beat dresses against the rocks with a rhythmic force. Her back ached. Her knees turned purple from resting so long on the hard rock. Her shoulders burned. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Every piece of clothing washed meant a few cents. A few cents meant flour for 3 more days. Flour meant not starving to death. It was early September of 1891 when Gabriel arrived in the village. Evelyn didn't pay attention to the stranger at first. Strangers passed through the village now and then. Merchants heading north, drovers herding cattle, families moving regions looking for better land. Most stayed one night at Mr. Abernathy's store and moved on. Few stayed, and none ever looked at Evelyn. Gabriel was different, but she didn't know that yet. He appeared on a hot afternoon, one of those where the sun seems stuck in the middle of the sky, and the air is so still that even the birds fall silent. Evelyn was returning from the creek carrying a bundle of clean, damp clothes on her head. Her back arched under the weight. Her bare feet kicked up red dust from the ground. Sweat ran down her forehead, her temples, wetting the nape of her neck. She saw him out of the corner of her eye when she passed in front of the old carpentry shop that had been abandoned for months. A tall man, broad shoulders, light brown hair, slightly wavy, stood on the threshold, looking into the interior of the establishment. He had a travel pack at his feet. He wore simple trousers, a cotton shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows, boots worn but still whole, a few days' stubble, a serious face, tired, the kind of tiredness that comes from a long way off and from deep inside. Evelyn lowered her eyes and quickened her pace. It was none of her business who came or went. Strangers didn't look at her. They never looked. But Gabriel looked. She felt the weight of that gaze on her back as if it were a hand resting on her shoulder. It wasn't the look of contempt she knew well. It wasn't the look of pity that hurt as much as contempt. It was different. She couldn't name it at the time, but she felt it, and she hurried even more, almost running, with her heart beating fast without understanding why. Gabriel Henry Thorne was 35 years old and carried his own weight of sorrow. He was a carpenter by trade, a profession he learned from his father as a boy. He had skilled hands, a precise eye for measurements, patience with wood. He married at 30 to Clara, a sweet girl from a neighboring town. They had 2 years of simple happiness. Clara fell pregnant. Gabriel built a cradle of wood carved with flowers and birds, every detail made with the love of a father who didn't even know his child's face yet. But Clara died in childbirth. The baby didn't survive either, a girl. Gabriel didn't even have time to name her. He buried his wife and daughter in the same coffin. He spent 2 years living alone in the house he had built for a family. But the walls held ghosts. The empty cradle in the corner of the room screamed silence. Gabriel couldn't take it. He sold the house, sold the furniture, packed his carpentry tools in a leather satchel, and started walking. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to go. He passed through 3 towns, but none seemed right, until he arrived in Oakhaven and saw the old abandoned carpentry shop. The wood on the facade was peeling. The door creaked, but the structure was solid. It had potential, and the owner, Mr. Abernathy, was willing to rent it cheap to someone who wanted to reopen the business. Gabriel wasn't looking to start over, but new beginnings sometimes find us even when we're running from them. That first afternoon, after striking a deal with Mr. Abernathy, Gabriel cleaned the old shop, clearing out spiderwebs, sweeping away months of dust, forcing open stuck windows. He worked until the sun began to set. His tired body thanked the physical distraction. It was easier to deal with muscle fatigue than with the fatigue of the soul. When he went out to fetch water at the community well in the square, he saw Evelyn again. She was sitting on a tree stump near the store, folding clean clothes and stacking them into separate bundles to return to their owners. She worked quickly, with precise and efficient movements. Her hands, though swollen and cracked, had grace in their gestures. She folded each piece with care, smoothed it with her palm, checked if it was dry. Gabriel stopped a few yards away, without her noticing, and watched. The setting sun illuminated her face from the side. Evelyn had marked cheekbones, a delicate jaw, long lashes that cast shadows on her cheeks when she lowered her eyes, lips chapped from the sun but still well-defined, a slender neck. There was beauty there. Beauty hidden under layers of exhaustion, poverty and resignation. But it was there. Gabriel saw it, and more than physical beauty, he saw something else. He saw the upright posture even while carrying the weight of the world. He saw the delicacy in her gestures, even with hands destroyed by labor. He saw the dignity she tried to maintain even while wearing rags. It was like looking at a rough diamond covered in mud. Most people only saw the mud. Gabriel saw the diamond. He didn't know why it touched him, maybe because he felt covered in mud too. Maybe because he recognized in her the same pain of someone who has lost everything and yet keeps going. Maybe because his eyes, trained by years of working with wood, knew how to spot the potential hidden beneath a rough surface. Evelyn finished folding the last piece, stood up from the stump with difficulty, her back clearly aching, and carried the bundles back to her room. She didn't see Gabriel watching. She didn't see the way he tilted his head slightly, as if he were solving a silent riddle. 3 days passed before the first real contact between them. Gabriel reopened the carpentry shop. He placed a new sign out front with simple lettering, Thorn carpentry, repairs and custom furniture. The villagers, curious about the stranger, started to show up. Some brought broken chairs, others ordered doors. An elderly lady asked for a bench for her porch. Gabriel accepted the jobs, charged a fair price, and did quality work. His reputation began to grow quickly, but Gabriel had a problem. His shirts were dirty. He had only 3. He wore one, washed another in the creek haphazardly, let it dry. But the result was terrible. The shirts ended up wrinkled with stains that didn't come out, smelling of mildew. Mr. Abernathy, seeing the stranger struggling with wet clothes hung up carelessly, suggested with good humour that he seek out the village washerwoman. "Evelyn washes clothes for half the folks here," the old man explained. "Charges cheap and does a good job. Lives right back there in the little room." Gabriel asked where the room was. Mr. Abernathy pointed to a narrow door in the corner of the building. "Just knock," he said. "She's always there when she ain't at the creek." Gabriel took 2 dirty shirts, crossed the store, and knocked on the narrow door. It took a moment. Then the door opened just a crack. Evelyn appeared. Suspicious eyes, hair tied back hastily, patched dress, the smell of strong soap and dampness. She recognized him immediately. It was the stranger who opened the carpentry shop. The man she had seen that afternoon, and who, she remembered clearly, had looked at her. "Good afternoon," Gabriel said in a low but clear voice. "Mr. Abernathy told me you wash clothes, ma'am." Evelyn nodded without saying anything. She waited. "I need these shirts washed," Gabriel continued, showing the garments. "How much do you charge?" Evelyn looked at the shirts, looked at his face. She expected to see what she always saw in the men who came to ask for service: haste, impatience, a distant look as if talking to a piece of furniture, but she didn't see that. He was looking directly into her eyes, waiting for an answer. As if the answer mattered. 10 cents apiece, Evelyn murmured in a raspy voice of someone who speaks little. Gabriel nodded. "That's fair. When will they be ready?" 2 days. He held out the shirts. Evelyn took them, but when her fingers brushed against his by accident, she pulled her hand back too fast, as if she had touched a hot coal. Gabriel noticed, but didn't comment. "My name is Gabriel," he said. "Gabriel Thorn. I reopened the carpentry shop on the corner." Evelyn hesitated. "Evelyn," she replied simply. Then she closed the door slowly. Gabriel stood there for a moment, looking at the closed door. Then he went back to the shop with a small smile on the corner of his mouth. He couldn't explain why, but that brief encounter had left something warm in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Evelyn, on the other side of the door, leaned her back against the wood and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. No one had looked her in the eye for 3 years. No one asked permission to speak to her. No one said, "My name is," as if names mattered. She didn't know what to do with that, so she did what she always did with confusing emotions. She buried them deep down and went back to work, but Gabriel's shirts were washed with special care. Evelyn took them to the creek the next morning. She soaked each one generously. She soaked them with attention, scrubbing gently so as not to wear out the fabric. She rinsed them 3 times until the water ran completely clear. She wrung them out without violence. She hung them on the makeshift line she kept between 2 trees near the river. When they were dry, she ironed them one by one using a flat iron heated on a small fire she made with twigs. She folded them to perfection. She didn't understand why she was doing it. He was just another customer. Just another man who needed clean clothes, but her hands worked as if those shirts were gifts, not paid services. At the end of the 2nd day, Gabriel returned to the room. Evelyn opened the door, handed over the shirts wrapped in a clean cloth. 20 cents, she said softly. Gabriel took the shirts, examined one by unfolding it. His eyes widened slightly. The shirt was impeccable. Clean, smelling of sun and soap, ironed to perfection. better than any laundress he had ever known. "You do excellent work, ma'am," Gabriel said with genuine sincerity. "Thank you very much." Evelyn blinked in surprise. No one said thank you. They paid and left. Sometimes they didn't even pay right. They complained about imaginary stains to pay less. But this man was thanking her, and he seemed truly grateful. "You're welcome," she murmured. Gabriel paid the 20 cents. Then he added another 5. "The change," he explained, when he saw Evelyn look confused. "For the care." Evelyn held the coins in her hand as if they were gold. It wasn't the value, it was just 25 cents, but it was the gesture, it was the recognition, it was someone seeing the care she had put in, someone valuing it. "I'll need more clothes washed next week," Gabriel said. "Can I bring them?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes, you can," she replied, and for the first time in 3 years, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of her lips. Gabriel saw the smile, and decided in that moment that he would do anything to see that smile again. In the following days, Gabriel began to appear frequently. He brought shirts to wash, then he brought trousers, then a blanket that, according to him, smelled of mildew. Evelyn accepted everything, washed with the same special care, returned it impeccable. Gabriel always paid correctly, always with a few cents more as a tip for the care, and he always talked. In the beginning, they were brief conversations. Gabriel asked how her day was. Evelyn replied it was fine. He commented on the weather. She agreed, awkward silences between sentences. But slowly the conversations grew. Gabriel started asking her opinion on small things. "Miss Evelyn, do you think this ink stain will come out?" Evelyn examined it and replied with surprising knowledge. "It will, with lye soap and strong sun." Gabriel thanked her as if she had revealed a valuable secret. Another time, he brought a piece of blue fabric. "I'm thinking of making a curtain for the shop," he explained. "Do you think this color would look good?" Evelyn held the fabric, examined it against the light, and replied that blue was a fresh color, good for a work environment where the heat is stifling. "But I suggest a darker shade," she added shyly. "Light fabric gets dirty fast with sawdust." Gabriel grinned broadly. "You're right. I'll look for a navy blue." And he looked. And he hung the curtain, and every time he looked at it, he thought of Evelyn. The women of the village began to notice. Mrs. Eulalia, the blacksmith's wife, commented to Mrs. Carmen, the owner of the produce stand, that the new carpenter was paying too much attention to the ragamuffin. Mrs. Carmen passed it on to Mrs. Francis, who passed it on to Marianne. Marianne Vance had been a widow for 6 years, a wealthy widow. Her husband, a prosperous merchant, left her a big house, fat savings, rented lands. She was 32, she was beautiful, she knew it, and she was on the market for a second marriage. When Gabriel arrived in the village, tall, strong, beautiful eyes, honorable profession, Marianne decided he would be perfect. She began to frequent the carpentry shop with various excuses. She needed a new stool, then a shelf, then a repair on a door that wasn't even broken. She wore her best dresses, smiled with calculated coquetry, let her expensive perfume flood the room, touched his arm when she spoke, invited him to dinner. Gabriel was polite but distant. He accepted the jobs, did the service, charged fairly. But he didn't accept the dinner invitations. He didn't return the touches. He didn't hold her gaze when she tried to capture his attention. And Marianne noticed where Gabriel's eyes went when Evelyn passed down the street carrying bundles of laundry. Her anger grew slowly, like fire in dry straw. It was on a Saturday afternoon that the situation exploded for the first time. Evelyn was in the square, returning bundles of clean clothes to customers. Mrs. Eulalia complained that a towel still had a tiny grease spot. Evelyn apologized, said she would wash it again without charging. Mrs. Carman complained that a sheet wasn't smelling sweet enough. Evelyn promised to use more soap next time. Gabriel watched from afar, sitting on the step of the carpentry shop, drinking water. He saw the way those women treated Evelyn, how they spoke to her in harsh tones, how they threw the clothes instead of handing them over, how they turned their backs without even a thank you, and he felt the anger rising in his throat. Marianne appeared in the square at that moment. She saw Gabriel watching Evelyn and decided to act. She crossed the square with firm steps, taffeta skirt brushing the ground, leather shoes clicking on the stones. She got close to Evelyn and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "So you are the famous washerwoman who is enchanting the new carpenter." The entire square went silent. Evelyn raised her eyes slowly. Her face paled. She didn't answer. Marianne smiled with cruelty. "You must have interesting tricks," she continued, "because it certainly isn't beauty or elegance that draws attention. Look at these rags you wear. You look like a beggar." Some women giggled softly. Others looked away, ashamed, but did not intervene. Evelyn lowered her head. She squeezed her hands together until her knuckles turned white. Gabriel stood up from the step. He crossed the square in long strides. He arrived at Evelyn's side and said in a clear, firm voice, "Mrs. Vance, with all due respect, you are being cruel and unjust." Marianne blinked in surprise. "What?" "You may wear expensive dresses and imported perfumes," Gabriel continued, "but that gives you no right to humiliate someone who works honestly to survive. Miss Evelyn is an honorable worker, does excellent service, and deserves respect. If you cannot see that, the problem isn't with her rags. It is in your heart, ma'am." The square fell into absolute silence. Marianne turned red with rage. "How dare you speak to me like that?" "I dare because it is the truth." Gabriel did not look away. "And if you will excuse me, I have work to do." He turned to Evelyn. "Miss Evelyn, may I walk you back?" Evelyn looked at him with wide eyes, shining with held-back tears. She nodded without being able to speak. Gabriel took the laundry bundles Evelyn was still holding, carried them himself, and walked beside her back to the room, under the shocked gazes of the entire square. Marianne stood there, publicly humiliated, trembling with rage, and the war began. When Gabriel set the bundles on the floor of the room and turned to leave, Evelyn held his wrist with trembling fingers. He stopped, looked down, and saw tears finally running down her face, cutting clean trails in the dust that always clung to her skin. "Why did you do that?" she whispered in a choked voice. "Why did you get involved? Now they will speak ill of you too." Gabriel held her hand delicately. "Because it was wrong, Miss Evelyn, and when something is wrong, I cannot stay silent. It doesn't matter what they say about me." "But you don't even know me well." "I know enough," Gabriel replied. "I see a woman who works hard, who does her job with care, who treats others with respect even when she doesn't receive the same in return. That tells me everything I need to know." Evelyn sobbed. It had been so long since someone spoke of her as if she were a person, not a thing. So long since someone saw value in her beyond the cheap price she charged for washing clothes. And now this man, this stranger who owed her nothing, had risked his own reputation in the village to defend her publicly. "Thank you," she managed to say between tears. "Thank you so much." Gabriel squeezed her hand slightly before letting go. "You don't need to thank me for respect, Miss Evelyn. Respect isn't a favor. It's the minimum every person deserves." And he left, leaving Evelyn sitting on the old cot with her heart beating in a way she thought it never would again. As if she were waking up from a very long, very cold sleep. But waking up hurts, and the consequences came fast. The next day, Sunday, Reverend Henry included in his sermon at Mass a speech about worldly temptations and how good men must distance themselves from women of dubious reputation. He didn't mention names. He didn't need to. Everyone knew who and what he was talking about. Gabriel was at the service. Sitting in the back pew, arms crossed, he stared at the preacher throughout the entire sermon without looking away. When the Reverend met his eyes, he hesitated for a fraction of a second before continuing. Evelyn was not at the service. She never went, not because she didn't believe in God, but because she couldn't bear the looks of judgment, the whispers, the way people moved away from her, as if poverty were a contagious disease. On Monday, Mrs. Eulalia, Mrs. Carmen, and 3 other customers appeared at Evelyn's room to pick up their clothes and announce they would no longer need her services. Mrs. Eulalia was direct. "My husband doesn't want me associating with a woman who goes around causing trouble in the village." Evelyn tried to argue. "I didn't cause any trouble. I was just working." But Mrs. Carmen cut in. "You are attracting undue attention from a single man. That is not decent behavior for a widow. You should be ashamed." Evelyn lost 5 customers that day, more than half her income. On Tuesday, the price of flour she bought at Mr. Abernathy's store mysteriously went up. When she asked why, the old man looked away embarrassed and murmured something about suppliers. But Evelyn knew. Someone had applied pressure. Someone wanted to make her life even harder. On Wednesday, when she went to the creek to wash the few clothes she still had from customers, she found Mrs. Francis and Mrs. Teresa already occupying the best stones. Normally they ignored her, and Evelyn used the stones without problems. But this time, when she approached, Mrs. Francis said loudly, "This spot is taken. Find another." Evelyn stopped. "But there is always room for everyone." "Not today," Mrs. Teresa crossed her arms. "We don't want your company." Evelyn had to walk another 500 yards downriver to find free stones. Worse stones, more irregular, which hurt her knees even more. Gabriel noticed she hadn't appeared in the village for 3 days. On Thursday morning, he closed the carpentry shop early and went to the room, knocked on the door. No one answered. Knocked again. Silence. "Miss Evelyn," he called. "It's me, Gabriel. I just want to know if everything is all right." It took a long moment. Then the door opened, just a crack. Evelyn's face appeared. She had deep, dark circles. Her face was thinner, lips chapped. "I'm fine," she lied. "No, you're not," Gabriel replied softly. "May I come in?" Evelyn hesitated. Letting a man into her room was scandalous. But what difference did it make now? They were already speaking ill of her anyway. She opened the door. Gabriel entered the tiny room, and his heart clenched. The place was even worse than he imagined. Damp, dark, a penetrating smell of mold, an old cot with a thin blanket, a trunk, bundles of clothes piled in the corner, no window. A spent candle on top of the trunk. It was less than the minimum. It was almost nothing, and in the corner he saw an empty plate with remnants of raw flour mixed with water. She was eating that because she had nothing else. He turned to her and saw Evelyn with her head down, ashamed of her exposed poverty. "How many customers did you lose?" Gabriel asked with a controlled voice. "5," murmured Evelyn. "More than half. Because of me." "No." Evelyn raised her eyes. "You only did what was right. I already knew this could happen. People here don't like it when someone defends the invisible. It makes them remember their own cruelty." Gabriel took a deep breath. "This will change," he said with determination. "I'm going to fix this." "There is no way to fix it," Evelyn replied tiredly. "That's how the world works. People like me stay down, people like Mrs. Vance stay on top, and there's no use fighting it." Gabriel took a step forward, held her shoulders delicately. "Evelyn, look at me." She raised her face. "You are not invisible," Gabriel said, looking deep into her eyes. "Not to me. I see you. I see a strong, hard-working, dignified woman. I see someone who deserves respect and care, and I won't let you starve because of this." He took a small cloth pouch from his pocket, placed it in her hand. Evelyn opened it and saw money. Not much, but more than she had seen together in months. "I can't accept this," she said, pushing the pouch back. "It would be charity, and I still have pride." "It isn't charity." Gabriel closed her fingers over the pouch. "It is payment. I need you to wash my clothes, to sew up some tears, to do some fabric repairs. I have a lot of work piled up. You would be doing me a favor." It was a lie. They both knew. But it was a kind lie. Evelyn held the pouch and the tears began to flow again. "Before continuing with this emotional story, help me out with something quick. If you are enjoying this, leave a like on the video. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring more stories like this. And share it with that person you know will be moved by this tale." Now let's get back to Evelyn and Gabriel. That night, Evelyn managed to buy beans, rice, a piece of dried meat, and a new candle. She ate the first decent meal in days. And while she ate, she thought of Gabriel, the way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, as if she mattered, as if she were a whole person, not a broken scrap. And for the first time in 3 years, Evelyn felt something dangerous grow in her chest. Hope. Gabriel started showing up every day. He brought clothes to wash, but he also brought other things. Fresh bread left over from breakfast, fruit he got from a customer. Once he brought a piece of thick fabric and asked her to make an apron for him. He paid generously for everything, and they talked. The conversations became longer, deeper, more personal. Gabriel told her about Clara, about the daughter who never got to be born, about the pain he carried. Evelyn listened with watery eyes and held his hand without thinking. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It must be a terrible pain." "It is," Gabriel agreed. "But do you know what's worse than the pain? It's the emptiness. It's feeling that you will never connect with another person again, that chance has passed and won't come back. I thought I was going to live like this forever." "And now?" asked Evelyn softly. Gabriel looked at her. "Now I don't know. Maybe another chance exists. Maybe connections appear in the most unexpected places." Evelyn felt her face heat up. She looked away, but didn't let go of his hand. She also told her story. She spoke of Thomas, of the accident, of how she lost everything in a matter of days. She spoke of the loneliness, the invisibility, the way she was being erased little by little until she almost disappeared. Gabriel listened to every word with complete attention. And when she finished, he said, "You didn't disappear, Evelyn. You were just hidden. But I found you." Her heart skipped a beat, hearing her own name without the Miss or Mrs. in front. It was intimate, dangerous, wonderful. Days turned into weeks. Gabriel started making small gestures that Evelyn didn't know how to interpret. He fixed the door of the room that didn't close right. He brought a stool he had made from leftover wood so she could sit comfortably while sewing. He installed a shelf on the wall for her to organize her few things. Evelyn reciprocated the way she could. She washed and ironed his clothes with extreme care. She sewed new buttons on all his shirts. She made an embroidered dish towel with the initials GT and gave it as a gift without a special reason. Gabriel hung the towel in the carpentry shop as if it were a work of art. The people of the village commented. Of course they commented. Marianne intensified the campaign. She spread rumors that Evelyn was using witchcraft to attract Gabriel, that she was a loose woman trying to trap a decent man, that Gabriel was being deceived and would soon discover his mistake. Reverend Henry called Gabriel for a private chat. "My son," he began with a false paternal tone, "I am worried about your soul. That woman is not suitable for you. She is poor, without family, without reputation. You deserve someone better." Gabriel looked at the preacher coldly. "Reverend, with all due respect, I didn't ask for your opinion on my personal life. And if you want to know, I don't deserve someone better. I barely deserve someone like Evelyn. She is stronger and more dignified than half this village put together. The preacher frowned. "You are making a grave mistake." "The only grave mistake I see here," Gabriel replied, standing up, "is an entire community that thinks it acceptable to humiliate a poor widow because she has nothing. Excuse me, Reverend, I have work to do." And he left, leaving the preacher shocked. But not everything was conflict. There were sweet moments. Moments Evelyn would keep in her memory forever. Like that afternoon when Gabriel appeared in the room with a small mirror framed in wood. "I made this for you," he said, somewhat sheepishly. "I thought you might want a mirror." Evelyn took the mirror and saw her reflection for the first time in months. She avoided mirrors because it hurt to see what she had become. But this time, holding Gabriel's gift, she really looked. She saw the dull but still beautiful hair. She saw the tired but still expressive eyes. She saw the woman who existed beneath the layer of poverty and suffering. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "The work is perfect." "The frame is just wood," said Gabriel, stepping closer. "What matters is what's inside the reflection." "And what is inside?" asked Evelyn without taking her eyes off the mirror. "A queen," Gabriel replied softly. Evelyn turned to him surprised. "A queen? Me?" "You always were, Evelyn. People were just too blind to see." She held the mirror against her chest. No one had ever spoken of her that way. No one had ever looked beyond the rags. No one except him. Another time he appeared with a wrapped bundle. "Open it," he said, smiling. Evelyn unwrapped it, and inside was fabric. It wasn't expensive fabric. It wasn't silk or taffeta like Marianne's dresses. But it was new, clean fabric of a beautiful, soft blue, enough to make a simple dress. "Gabriel, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he insisted. "You deserve clothes that aren't patch over patch. And before you say it's charity, it's not. Consider it advance payment for the next months of laundry. But this is too much fabric to—" "Evelyn," Gabriel held her shoulders. "Please, let me do this. Let me give you something you deserve." She looked at the fabric, at his face, and nodded with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For seeing me when no one else did." "I will always see you," Gabriel promised, "always." And in that moment, standing in the damp and dark room, they realized that something had changed between them. It wasn't just respect anymore. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was something deeper, stronger, more terrifying. Evelyn sewed the new dress with hands trembling with emotion. She worked for 3 nights in a row by the dim candlelight. She cut the fabric with care, sewed every stitch with attention. Made a simple collar, sleeves to the elbows, a cinched waist. Nothing elaborate, but honest, beautiful in its own way. When she put it on for the first time, she looked at herself in the mirror Gabriel had made. And she didn't recognize the woman looking back. That woman had an upright posture, shining eyes, an expression of dignity. She looked like someone who mattered. Gabriel saw her for the first time in the new dress on a Saturday morning. She was in the square returning clothes to the few customers she still had when he came out of the carpentry shop. Gabriel stopped mid-step, simply stopped and stared. The blue of the dress highlighted her skin tone. The simple cut showed the natural elegance of her posture. Her hair, which she had washed with special care and pinned up in a neater bun, shone under the sun. She was beautiful. Not beautiful like Marianne with her expensive dresses and jewelry, beautiful in a truer way. Deeper. Evelyn felt his gaze. Turned around. Their eyes met across the square. And something passed between them. Something electric. Something inevitable. Gabriel crossed the square to her, stopped a few steps away. "The dress turned out perfect," he said in a hoarse voice. "You look beautiful." Evelyn blushed. "Thank you for everything, for the fabric, for making me feel seen." "You were always seen, Evelyn, at least by me." They stood there, looking at each other, while the entire square watched, and for the first time, Evelyn didn't care about the looks, didn't care about the whispers. Only the way Gabriel looked at her mattered, as if she were precious. But happiness in small villages lasts little when it bothers powerful people. Marianne watched the scene from the window of her large house. She saw the way Gabriel looked at that miserable woman, saw the new dress, saw the smile on Evelyn's face. And her anger reached a boiling point. That afternoon, Marianne called a meeting in her living room. She called Mrs. Eulalia, Mrs. Carmen, Mrs. Francis, Mrs. Teresa, and 3 other influential ladies of the village. She served coffee and cake and presented her plan. "That woman needs to leave the village," Marianne said in a cold voice. "She is causing division, scandal. She is seducing a good man with tricks. We cannot allow it." "But what can we do?" asked Mrs. Eulalia. "She isn't doing anything illegal." "It doesn't need to be illegal," replied Marianne. "It needs to be unsustainable. If all of us stop giving her work, if we convince our husbands to do the same, if we make her life impossible here, she will leave on her own. And Gabriel will forget this madness." The women agreed, each for different reasons, some out of envy, others out of false morality, others simply because following Marianne was safer than crossing her. The campaign began the next day. Mr. Abernathy received a visit from Marianne. She insinuated that it would be a pity if the town's merchants decided to stop buying lumber from his sawmill. She had influence, she had money, she could make his life difficult, unless he asked that washerwoman to vacate the room. Mr. Abernathy, an old and tired man who had no energy for fights, gave in. He appeared at the door of the room that afternoon, with his hat in his hand and an ashamed expression. "Evelyn," he began, without being able to look her in the eye, "I'm so sorry, but I'm going to need you to leave the room by the end of the week." Evelyn felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. "Why? I pay the rent on time. I've never caused trouble." "It's not because of you," the old man explained. "It's pressure. Important folks are pressuring me. I have no choice." "But I have nowhere to go." Evelyn felt panic rise in her throat. "This is the only place I can afford." "I know. And I'm sorry. But I can't do anything." Mr. Abernathy put his hat back on and left quickly, running from the guilt stamped on Evelyn's face. She sat on the cot and buried her face in her hands. It was happening again. She was losing everything again. No matter how much she fought, how much she worked, powerful people always won, always crushed those who were down. Gabriel found out the next day. He took clothes to be washed and found Evelyn packing her few possessions into the old trunk. Her face was swollen from crying. Her hands trembled as she folded the thin blanket. "What is happening?" asked Gabriel, entering the room. Evelyn told him. "Mr. Abernathy asked me to leave by the end of the week, said he is being pressured." "Who is pressuring him?" Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Both knew. Gabriel felt anger like he hadn't felt in a long time. Clean, righteous anger, the kind that makes a man take definitive decisions. "You are not going anywhere," he said firmly. "I have no choice." "Yes, you do." Gabriel knelt in front of her. "Come live with me." Evelyn's eyes went wide. "What?" "The carpentry shop has a room in the back. Small but bigger than this here. It has a window. It's dry. You can stay there." "Gabriel, I can't. People will talk. They'll say I'm your—" "Damn the people." Gabriel held her hands. "Evelyn, listen to me. I don't care what these petty people think. I won't leave you on the street to protect a reputation that is already being destroyed anyway. You need a safe place. I have one. It's that simple. But no buts." Gabriel squeezed her hands. "You come to the shop, stay in the back room, keep doing your work, and whoever wants to complain will have to go through me first." Evelyn looked at that man kneeling in front of her, holding her calloused hands as if they were delicate, offering a roof, security, protection. And for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel alone. "All right," she whispered. "I accept." The smile that lit up Gabriel's face was worth more than anything. They moved Evelyn's things that same afternoon. There wasn't much to move. A trunk, a blanket, some bundles of clothes, the mirror Gabriel had made, the candle, the blue dress. Gabriel carried everything alone to the carpentry shop, while Evelyn walked beside him with her head held high. The whole village watched. Whispers exploded, scandal, absurdity, single man and single woman living under the same roof. It was unacceptable. It was immoral. Gabriel didn't care. He installed Evelyn in the back room of the shop. It was small, but had a window that let in sunlight. It had a better cot, a small table, a chair, a shelf. Compared to the damp hole where she lived, it was a palace. "You stay here," Gabriel said. "It's your space. No one enters without your permission, not even me. You have privacy, you have safety, and you don't owe me anything for this." Evelyn looked around with tears flowing. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how I'm going to pay for this." "You aren't going to pay anything," Gabriel replied, "because it isn't a debt. It's a choice. I choose to help you because I want to. Because I care about you." The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken things. Gabriel left the room, leaving Evelyn alone to get organized. But before closing the door, he turned. "Evelyn?" She looked at him. "I didn't do this just because it's right," Gabriel said. "I did it because I can't imagine you far away. I can't imagine not seeing you every day. You have become important to me. Very important." And he left before she could respond. Evelyn sat on the new bed with her heart beating so hard it hurt. He felt it. He felt the same thing she did, that heat in the chest, that desire to be close, that fear of losing. It was love, still small, still growing, still scared. But it was love. Living under the same roof changed everything. They saw each other all the time. Gabriel working in the shop, sawing wood, hammering nails, sanding surfaces. Evelyn washing clothes in the backyard, sewing repairs, hanging pieces on the line. They crossed paths in the hallways, had coffee together in the morning, shared dinner at night. And they talked. They talked about everything. Gabriel told her about his childhood in rural Pennsylvania, about his carpenter father who taught him the trade, about his mother who died of fever when he was 12. Evelyn told him about growing up an orphan, raised by kind neighbors, about learning to sew and cook very early to become useful. They shared comfortable silences. Those silences that only exist between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. One night, Evelyn was sewing by candlelight when Gabriel appeared at the door of the room. "May I come in?" She nodded. He entered and sat on the chair. They sat in silence for a while, her sewing, him watching. "Are you happy here?" Gabriel asked suddenly. Evelyn stopped sewing, looked at him. "I am," she replied honestly. "Happier than I've been in 3 years." "Me too," said Gabriel. "Since you arrived, this shop feels like a real home. It's not just a place where I work and sleep anymore. It's a home." Evelyn's heart raced. "Gabriel." "I know it's soon," he interrupted. "I know people are already talking. I know we should go slow. But Evelyn, I need to speak the truth. I have fallen in love with you." The world stopped. Evelyn put down her sewing, stared at him with wide eyes. "I fell in love with the way you face the world even when the world is cruel," Gabriel continued. "With your strength, with your dignity, with your kindness that survived everything they tried to do to you. I fell in love with all of you, and I can't pretend I don't feel it anymore." Evelyn stood up, approached him, stopped inches away. "Me too," she whispered. I fell in love with you too, with the way you see me, with the way you treat me, with the way you make me feel that I am worth something." Gabriel stood up too. They stood very close. He raised his hand slowly, gave her time to pull back if she wanted, and touched her face with infinite gentleness. "You are worth everything," he said, "and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." And he kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, respectful, but full of promise, full of future. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. Marianne found out the next day that Evelyn was living at the carpentry shop. Her fury exploded. She called Reverend Henry, demanded he do something. That was a scandal. It was immoral. It was unacceptable. Reverend Henry, pressured, announced the following Sunday that there would be a special community meeting to deal with a matter of public morality. Everyone understood. It was about Gabriel and Evelyn. Gabriel went to the meeting. Evelyn wanted to go along, but he asked her not to. "I don't want them to humiliate you again," he explained. "Let me handle this." The meeting happened in the parish hall. There were 20 people. Marianne was at the front. Reverend Henry presided. "Gabriel Thorne," began the preacher, "you have brought scandal to our community by harboring a single woman in your residence. This violates all Christian principles of decency. We demand that you correct this situation immediately." Gabriel stood up, looked around at all those people with their faces of judgment, and replied with a clear voice, "You want to talk about Christian principles? Then let's talk. Where were your Christian principles when that same woman went hungry, when she was publicly humiliated, when she was treated like trash for being poor? Where was the charity, the compassion, the love for one's neighbor that you preach so much?" Awkward silence. "I sheltered Miss Evelyn because she needed it," Gabriel continued, "because it was the right thing to do. And if that scandalizes you, then the problem isn't in me, it is in you. In a community that calls itself Christian, but treats a poor widow worse than a stray dog." Marianne stood up furious. "You are being manipulated. That woman is using you." "Evelyn isn't using anyone," Gabriel turned to her. "Evelyn is an honest worker who just wants to live in peace. And if that bothers you, Mrs. Vance, maybe it's because you can't stand to see someone you tried to destroy stand up again." The room exploded in murmurs. "And since we are talking about morality," Gabriel raised his voice, "I have something to announce. I asked Evelyn to marry me, and she accepted. We are getting married next month, with or without your blessing." The shock was general. Gabriel had decided, there, in that moment, under pressure and anger, but also love and certainty. He was going to marry Evelyn. He was going to make her his wife. He was going to give her his name, his protection, his future. And no one was going to stop him. Gabriel returned to the carpentry shop with his hands trembling. He had announced the marriage in front of everyone, without having really asked Evelyn to marry him. It had just slipped out in the heat of the argument, moved by anger and the desire to protect her. And now he needed to tell her what he had done. Evelyn was in the room sewing when she heard Gabriel enter the shop. From the sound of his steps, she realized something had happened. She put down her work and went to the workshop. Gabriel was standing in the middle of the room, looking at his own hands. When he saw Evelyn, his face filled with mixed expressions: fear, hope, determination. "What happened at the meeting?" she asked with a soft voice. Gabriel took a deep breath. "I did something without asking you first. And I need to tell you." Evelyn felt her heart race. "What?" "I told everyone that we are going to get married, that I asked you to marry me and you accepted." Gabriel spoke fast, words stumbling over each other. "It was in the middle of the argument. They were pressuring me, humiliating you even without you being there, and I couldn't take it, so I announced it, and now the whole village knows." Silence. Evelyn stood still, processing. Gabriel had announced a marriage without asking. He had made a huge decision without consulting her, but when she looked at his face, she saw regret mixed with hope. She saw fear of having crossed a line, but she also saw love, true love that made her feel seen, valued, protected. "You should have asked me first," she said finally. "I know." Gabriel took a step forward. "I'm sorry. It was an impulse, but Evelyn, even being an impulse, it was the truth. I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life by your side. I want to wake up every day knowing you are here. I want to grow old with you." He knelt, there, in the middle of the carpentry shop covered in sawdust, with the smell of wood in the air. Gabriel knelt in front of her. "Evelyn, will you accept to marry me, for real now? Not because the village is pressuring, not because it's convenient, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you are the best thing that ever happened to me." Evelyn felt tears fill her eyes. She looked at that man kneeling, that man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had defended her when everyone attacked her, who had sheltered her when she had nowhere to go, who loved her not in spite of her rags but beyond them. "Yes," she whispered, "I accept." Gabriel stood up in a quick motion and scooped her up in his arms, spun her in the air. Evelyn laughed, a sound that hadn't left her throat for years, a true, light, happy laugh. When he put her on the ground, they kissed right there, amidst the sawdust and tools, sealing a promise of a future. But promises need to survive storms, and the storm was just beginning. Marianne did not accept defeat. That night, sitting in her living room with a glass of wine in her hand, she plotted. If she couldn't separate Gabriel from that woman with social pressure, she would use another method, more direct, crueler. She knew things. She knew people. She had money and influence, and she was willing to use it all to destroy what Gabriel and Evelyn were building. The next day, Monday, an unknown man appeared in the village. Tall, thin, city clothes, hard expression. He asked for Evelyn Wright. Several people pointed to the carpentry shop. He thanked them and headed in that direction. Evelyn was in the backyard hanging clothes on the line when she heard a male voice call her name. She turned and saw the stranger standing there, examining her up and down with a calculating look. "Evelyn Wright?" he asked. "Yes, that's me. Who are you, sir?" "My name is Silas Cross. I'm a debt collector, and I came to fetch what is owed to me." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Debts? I have no debts." "Your late husband did," replied Silas, taking a crumpled paper from his pocket. "Thomas Wright borrowed $50 from a lender 3 months before he died. He never paid. The debt passed to the widow, to you." Evelyn felt her legs weaken. $50 was a fortune. It was more money than she had seen in years. "I didn't know about this debt. Thomas never told me." "It doesn't matter if you knew. It matters that you owe." Silas folded the paper and put it away. "With 3 years of interest, the debt is now $100, and I came to collect. I don't have that money." Evelyn felt panic rise in her throat. "I barely have enough to eat." "Then you'll have to find it." Silas shrugged. "You have 2 weeks. If you don't pay, I'll have to seize your assets, and if you have no assets, you go to debtor's prison." "I have nothing! Nothing!" Silas looked around, saw the carpentry shop, saw Gabriel through the window working. Smiled with malice. "I heard you are living here, with the carpenter. Maybe he can help. Maybe he has an interest in paying his future wife's debt." And he left, leaving Evelyn trembling with fear. Gabriel found her sitting on the ground of the backyard, hugging her knees, crying, ran to her. "Evelyn, what happened?" Between sobs she told him about Silas, about the debt, about the threat of prison, told him that Thomas had hidden this from her, that she didn't know, that there was no way to pay. Gabriel held her in his arms tightly. "Breathe, Evelyn, breathe. We're going to solve this." "There is no way to solve it," she cried. $100. It's impossible. I'm going to prison. I'm going to lose everything again, and you will be free of this mess. Maybe it's better this way. You deserve someone without this kind of trouble." Gabriel held her face with both hands. "Look at me. Evelyn, look at me." She raised her eyes, red from crying so much. "I'm not going anywhere," Gabriel said firmly, "and neither are you. We're going to solve this together, understood? I have savings, not much, but I have some. Let's see how much is missing. Let's make a plan." Gabriel had saved about $40 in the 3 years working before arriving in the village, plus what he had saved in the months there. In total, he had approximately $55. $45 were missing. It was a lot of money, but Gabriel didn't give up. That afternoon, he closed the shop and went from house to house offering services: doors, windows, furniture, repairs, anything. He charged in advance and promised quick delivery. Some residents, touched by the situation, ordered work. Others slammed the door in his face. Evelyn sold everything of value she had, which wasn't much: the old trunk, the blanket she didn't use anymore, some pieces of cloth she had saved. She gathered a few dollars. Every coin counted, but even working day and night, even accepting every job that appeared, they weren't going to manage to gather $45 in 2 weeks. It was impossible. Gabriel thought about borrowing, but he had no one to turn to. He didn't know anyone in the village willing to lend such a high amount to a stranger. Evelyn fell into a silent despair. She became thin again, stopped eating properly, spent nights awake staring at the ceiling, calculating numbers that never added up. 1 week passed, then 10 days. The deadline was approaching, and they had only gathered $60. $40 were missing. $40 that didn't exist, that weren't going to appear. Marianne watched everything from afar with satisfaction. It had been her. She had discovered the old debt, investigating Evelyn's past. She had bought the debt from the original lender. She had hired Silas to collect, all planned to destroy Evelyn and make Gabriel give up. But Marianne underestimated one thing. She underestimated love, and she underestimated what happens when communities are forced to face their own cruelty. It was Widow Amelia, an elderly lady who lived alone at the edge of the village, who started the change. She appeared at the carpentry shop one afternoon, bringing a small cloth bundle, handed it to Gabriel. Inside was money. Not much. $5, life savings. "It's all I have," said the old woman with a trembling voice. "I want you to use it to help the girl. She washed my clothes for years, was always honest, was always careful. She doesn't deserve prison." Gabriel was speechless. "Mrs. Amelia, I can't accept your savings." "Yes, you can. I have no children, no family. When I die, this money goes nowhere. I prefer it helps someone now, someone who deserves it." And she left before Gabriel could argue. Mr. Abernathy appeared the next day, brought $3. "It's little," he said, ashamed, "but it's what I can give without compromising the business. And look, I'm sorry for asking her to leave the room. It was cowardice on my part, fear of powerful folks. I want to make up for it somehow." Gabriel accepted with gratitude. Then it was Mrs. Rosario, the village midwife, then Mr. Jacob, the blacksmith, then Mrs. Laura, the teacher. One by one, residents started to appear. Some brought $1, others 50 cents, others just 20 cents. But they came. They brought what they could, apologized for the way they had treated Evelyn, said they wanted to help. Not everyone came. Marianne and her close circle stayed away, but surprisingly more people helped than Gabriel expected, as if the threat of seeing Evelyn in prison had woken something in people, as if they finally saw the injustice, the cruelty, and wanted to fix it. In 3 days, they gathered another $22 in donations. Evelyn cried when Gabriel told her, cried with gratitude, with surprise, with relief. She had spent 3 years invisible, 3 years treated like trash. And now people were giving up their savings to save her. It was a small miracle, But it was a miracle. But $18 were still missing, and the deadline ended the next day. Gabriel spent the entire night in the carpentry shop working. Made 2 chairs he had promised, sanded a table, installed a door, worked until his hands bled from holding tools. But the money he would earn from these services would only arrive after the deadline. At dawn, he was sitting on the floor of the workshop, exhausted, desperate. He had $82. 18 were missing, and there was nowhere else to take from. Evelyn found him there, sat beside him, held his hand. "You did everything you could," she said with a soft voice. "More than I could dream. If I go to prison, it's not your fault." "You are not going to prison," Gabriel squeezed her hand. "Somehow we'll solve it." But not even he believed that. Silas appeared at noon. He arrived at the shop with 2 large men behind him, hard expression, hands in pockets. "I came for the payment," he announced. Gabriel stood up. "I gathered $82. 18 are missing, but I can pay the rest in installments. I give my word." "Your word is worth nothing to me," Silas spat on the floor. "The deal was $100 today. Don't have it. Then the woman comes with me." Evelyn was standing in the doorway of the room, pale, trembling. Gabriel took a step forward, blocking the path. "She isn't going anywhere. Get out of the way, Carpenter, or I'll have to make you move." The 2 big men advanced. Gabriel clenched his fists. He was willing to fight, knew he was going to lose. But he was going to fight anyway. That was when they heard a loud female voice coming from the street. "Wait!" Everyone turned and saw Marianne entering the carpentry shop. She carried a velvet purse in her hand. Her face was different. No arrogance, no cruelty. There was something softer, something resembling shame. She stopped in front of Silas. $18? She asked. He nodded suspiciously. Marianne opened the purse and took out banknotes, counted $18 exactly, extended them to Silas. "Here it is. The debt is paid. Now go away and never come back here." Silas took the money, counted, examined every note, then looked at Marianne with a confused expression. "But, Ma'am, it was you yourself who bought this debt. It was you who hired me to collect." "I know," replied Marianne, "and now I am paying. Consider the debt settled. Your work here is done." Silas shrugged, pocketed the money, motioned to the 2 men, and left without saying another word. Heavy silence took over the shop. Gabriel looked at Marianne without understanding. "Why? Why did you do that?" Marianne took a deep breath, stood silent for several seconds, as if gathering courage, finally spoke. "Because I spent the last few days seeing the whole village unite to save this woman. Seeing poor people give their last savings, seeing widow Amelia, who barely has enough to eat, give everything she had saved. And I realized something. I realized that I am the villain of this story." She looked at Evelyn. "I treated you with cruelty because I was envious. Envious because Gabriel looked at you in a way he never looked at me. And it wasn't because of your appearance. It was because of your character, your strength, your dignity. You have things money cannot buy, and I tried to destroy you because of that." Marianne wiped a tear that slipped out. "I bought this debt thinking I was going to separate you 2. But what I managed was to show how much you love each other, how much this community deep down still has goodness, and how petty I am." She extended her hand to Evelyn. "I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I was too cruel. But I'm asking anyway. I'm sorry for everything." Evelyn looked at that extended hand, at the woman who had tried to destroy her life. She could refuse. It would be fair to refuse. But when she looked into Marianne's eyes, she saw genuine regret. She saw someone who had finally faced her own inner ugliness and didn't like what she saw. Evelyn took her hand. "I accept," she said softly. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." Marianne squeezed Evelyn's hand and left quickly, as if afraid she might change her mind or break down in tears right there. Gabriel pulled Evelyn into a tight hug. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over. You are free. We are free." Evelyn buried her face in his chest and cried. Cried all the fear, all the tension, all the despair of the last few days, and Gabriel held her, stroking her hair, repeating that everything was fine, that it was over, that no one would ever threaten her like that again. Before we continue to the most beautiful part of this story, help me out by leaving a like if you are moved by the tale of Evelyn and Gabriel, and share it with someone you know will love this story. Now let's go to the finale of this unforgettable journey. The news spread through the village in a few hours. The debt had been paid, Evelyn was free, and it had been Marianne of all people who had paid. People didn't know what to think. Some thought it was true repentance. Others thought it was just an attempt to clear her conscience. But in the end, it didn't matter. Evelyn was safe. Preparations for the wedding began. Gabriel and Evelyn decided to have a simple ceremony. Just the preacher, a few witnesses, and then a small celebration at the carpentry shop. They didn't have money for a big party. They didn't need it. What mattered was the commitment, the promise, the love. Widow Amelia appeared with a piece of antique lace she had kept for decades. "It's from my wedding," she explained. "I want you to use it on the dress." Mrs. Rosario offered to lend her veil. Mrs. Laura said she would make a simple cake as a gift. Mr. Jacob offered an iron horseshoe made by hand as a symbol of luck. The village, guilty for the way they had treated Evelyn for years, was trying to make up for it. And Evelyn, with a heart larger than resentment, accepted every gesture with gratitude. She sewed her own wedding dress. She used simple white fabric Gabriel bought, sewed Widow Amelia's lace on the hem and sleeves, made a high collar, cinched waist, skirt that went to the ankles. It wasn't a rich woman's dress. It didn't have layers of tulle or elaborate embroidery, but it was beautiful. It was honest. It was hers. When it was ready and she tried it on for the first time, Gabriel entered the room inadvertently and saw her, stopped in the doorway, stared without being able to speak. Evelyn blushed. "It still needs some adjustments," she said nervously. "It's perfect," Gabriel whispered with a hoarse voice. "You are perfect." She spun around, showing the dress. "Are you sure?" "Isn't it too simple?" Gabriel crossed the room, held her hands. "Evelyn, you could marry me wearing rags, and you would still be the most beautiful bride that ever existed, because it's not the dress. It's you. It's the way you shine, how you always shone, even when no one wanted to see." Tears filled her eyes. "How do you always know what to say?" "Because it's the truth." Gabriel touched her face. "Every word I say to you is the truth." And they stood there, holding each other, savoring a moment of peace after so much storm. The wedding was set for the following Saturday. Days before, something unexpected happened. It started to rain. Heavy rain, the kind that doesn't stop. It rained on Tuesday, rained on Wednesday, rained on Thursday. The creek that cut through the village began to rise. The banks became muddy. The water, normally calm, became fast and brown. On Friday morning, the creek overflowed. Water invaded houses close to the bank. Widow Amelia, who lived nearby, saw the water enter through the floor of her small cottage. She screamed for help. Mr. Jacob and other men ran to assist, but the current was strong, dangerous. Gabriel and Evelyn heard the commotion and ran to the street, saw the chaos, people trying to save belongings, children crying, confused elderly people not knowing where to go. Evelyn looked around, and something in her awakened. For 3 years she had been invisible, had been the person who took orders, who lowered her head, who accepted crumbs. But in that moment, seeing people in danger, something old returned. The woman she had been before losing everything, the strong woman, the capable woman. "We need to organize this," she said, turning to Gabriel. "The houses near the creek need to be evacuated. The elderly and children first. We have to get everyone to high ground." Gabriel nodded. You're right. Let's do it. They split up. Gabriel went with the men to help evacuate the nearest houses. Evelyn started organizing the people. Her voice, normally low and shy, became firm and clear. Mrs. Carmen, take the children to the church. It's on high ground. It won't flood. Mr. Abernathy, open your store. We're going to need a place to shelter folks. Mrs. Laura, help gather blankets and food. It's going to be a long night. The people, accustomed to despising Evelyn, were surprised. But they obeyed. There was natural authority in her at that moment, leadership that came from someone who knows what it is to lose everything and survive. The situation worsened during the day. The water kept rising. More houses were invaded. Water reached knee-height in some streets. They needed to use ropes to cross flooded areas. It was during one of these rescues that Evelyn saw a small child, maybe 4 years old, trapped in a house that was being rapidly invaded by water. The mother was screaming outside, but the current was too strong to cross. Evelyn didn't think. She just acted. She tied a rope around her waist, asked 3 men to hold the other end, and entered the water. The current pulled hard. She almost fell, but she kept advancing, step by step, holding onto fences, trees, anything that gave support. Reached the house, went in, found the terrified child on top of a table. "Come with me," said Evelyn, extending her hand. "I'm going to get you out of here." The child hesitated. Evelyn smiled, that smile she had forgotten how to make for 3 years. "Trust me, it's going to be all right." The child jumped into her arms. Evelyn held him tight and started to return. The current pulled harder now. Her legs shook from the effort, but the men pulled the rope. Gabriel, who had seen what she was doing, had grabbed the rope too and was pulling with the strength of desperation. Evelyn managed to cross, handed the child to the mother, who wept with relief and fell to her knees in the mud, exhausted. Gabriel ran to her, held her face. "Are you crazy? You could have died." "The child was going to die if someone didn't do anything," Evelyn replied, panting. "And I did what was needed." Gabriel pulled her into a tight hug. "Don't do that again. Don't scare me like that. I can't bear losing you." "You won't lose me," she promised, "but I'm also not going to stand still when I can help." Night fell with dozens of families displaced. The church was full. The store was full. The carpentry shop itself opened its doors to shelter 5 families. Evelyn spent the night taking care of everyone, distributed food, separated blankets, calmed scared children, treated small wounds, consoled the elderly who had lost their homes. And people watched that woman they had despised for years show strength, compassion, leadership. Watched her work tirelessly, caring for those in need, without asking for anything in return. And finally, they saw. They didn't see the rags. They saw the Queen. On Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, the water began to recede. People went out to assess the damage. Several houses had been damaged. Belongings were lost, but no life was lost, thanks to the quick organization, thanks to the leadership, thanks, in large part, to Evelyn. Mrs. Carmen was the first to thank her. Hugged Evelyn and apologized for the horrible things she had said. Mrs. Eulalia did the same, then Mrs. Francis. One by one, the women who had been cruel came to ask for forgiveness. Evelyn accepted every apology with grace, without grudge, without arrogance, with the dignity she always had, but that now, finally, everyone could see. In the afternoon, when things calmed down, Reverend Henry appeared at the carpentry shop. He came to speak with Gabriel and Evelyn. "I came to offer apologies," he said with rare humility. "I judged you without knowing, preaching morality while ignoring charity. Yesterday I saw what true Christianity looks like. I saw it in the way you helped everyone without thinking twice. I was wrong about you, very wrong." Gabriel and Evelyn accepted the apology. "And another thing," the preacher continued. "Do you still want to get married today? Because if you do, it would be an honor to perform the ceremony." Gabriel looked at Evelyn. She smiled. "Yes, we do," he replied, "more than ever." They didn't have time to fix up much. The church was messy from serving as a shelter all night. Evelyn was tired, muddy, with soaked clothes. Gabriel wasn't any better. But it didn't matter. Evelyn put on the simple white dress, put on the borrowed veil, pinned up her hair with hands trembling from emotion and fatigue. She had no flowers, no music, no decoration. When she arrived at the church, she discovered she was wrong. The whole village was there, everyone she and Gabriel had helped in the flood, and more people. Widow Amelia had decorated the altar with wildflowers she picked in the morning. Mrs. Laura had made not one but 3 cakes. Mr. Jacob had polished the lucky horseshoe until it shined. Mrs. Rosario had brought candles. And Marianne was there too, sitting in the back pews, discreet but present. When her eyes met Evelyn's, she nodded slightly. Evelyn smiled back. True forgiveness. The ceremony was simple but moving. Reverend Henry conducted it with a clear and respectful voice. Gabriel held Evelyn's hands and said his vows. I, Gabriel Henry Thorne, promise to love you, Evelyn Wright, every day of my life. I promise to see you always, even when the world is blind. I promise to protect you, respect you, honor you. You are my queen, and I will be your king, forever. Evelyn, with tears streaming, said her vows. I, Evelyn Wright, promise to love you, Gabriel, with everything I am. You found me when I was lost, saw me when I was invisible, loved me when I thought I didn't deserve love. I promise to build a life by your side. I promise to be with you in storms and in sun. I promise to make you happy every day God gives me. Reverend Henry declared them husband and wife. Gabriel kissed Evelyn under emotional applause from the whole village. The party happened right there, in front of the church. Improvised, simple, but full of genuine joy. They ate cake, drank wine Mr. Abernathy donated, danced to the sound of a fiddle someone brought. Evelyn, who hadn't danced in years, spun in Gabriel's arms under the sky, starting to clear after the storm. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt complete. The following months brought changes. Gabriel and Evelyn prospered. The carpentry shop grew. He made better and better furniture. She started a small sewing business. She didn't wash clothes for others anymore. Now she sewed new clothes, dresses, shirts, trousers. Her work was excellent. Soon she had more orders than she could do alone. Evelyn hired 2 other women from the village to help, women who were also invisible, also forgotten. And she taught them, paid them fairly, treated them with dignity. Created a small group of seamstresses who worked together, laughing, talking, supporting each other. Their house at the back of the shop was expanded. Gabriel built 2 more rooms, a better kitchen, a small but cozy living room. It wasn't a big house, but it was a real home, and Evelyn changed on the outside too. She had 5 dresses now, all sewn by herself. Her hair, well cared for, shone again. Her hands, still calloused, were healed of their wounds. She wore an easy smile, laughed frequently, looked people in the eye without fear. But the biggest change was internal. She didn't hide anymore, didn't lower her head. Walked through the village streets with upright posture, greeting neighbors, stopping to chat. She had become a respected leader of the community. When there was a problem, people looked for Evelyn. When they needed advice, they looked for Evelyn. The invisible woman had become impossible to ignore. Gabriel watched her transformation with growing pride and love. "I knew it," he would say sometimes. "I knew you were a queen from the start." And Evelyn would reply, "You taught me to see that. Taught me that rags don't define anyone. That value is in here," pointing to her heart. 2 years after the wedding, on a spring morning, Evelyn woke up feeling strange. Nausea, dizziness, tenderness. She recognized the signs immediately, had seen them in other women. Waited 2 more weeks to be sure, then told Gabriel. He was in the shop sawing wood when she appeared. "Gabriel," she called softly. He put down the saw, saw the expression on her face. "What? Did something happen?" "I'm pregnant," said Evelyn with a trembling voice. "We're going to have a baby." Gabriel stood paralyzed for 3 seconds, processing. Then his face broke into the most beautiful smile Evelyn had ever seen. He ran across the workshop, picked her up, spun her in the air. Laughing, crying, radiant, "We're going to have a baby, we're going to be parents." Evelyn laughed too, holding on to him, sharing the joy. "Yes, we're going to be parents." The pregnancy was smooth. Mrs. Rosario, the experienced midwife, took care of Evelyn through all the months. Gabriel became an even more attentive husband, didn't let her carry weight, cooked when she was tired, gave her massages on swollen feet, talked to the growing belly every night before sleeping. In December, on a warm night, the pains began. The labor lasted 7 hours. Gabriel stayed outside the room, pacing from one side to the other, praying, afraid of losing Evelyn like he had lost Clara. But Mrs. Rosario was good at what she did, and Evelyn was strong. When the baby's cry finally echoed, Gabriel ran into the room. Evelyn was lying down, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in clean cloth. "It's a boy," she said with a tired but happy voice. "We have a son." Gabriel knelt beside the bed, looked at the tiny face of his son, looked at Evelyn, and cried with relief, with joy, with gratitude. They named the boy Thomas, in honor of Evelyn's first husband. Gabriel suggested it, and she accepted emotionally. Thomas Gabriel, a name that honored the past and celebrated the present. The baby was healthy, small but strong, had dark eyes like his mother and brown hair like his father, cried with powerful lungs, nursed well. Was perfect. The whole village celebrated the birth, brought gifts, sewn clothes, wool blankets, wooden toys Gabriel made, food for Evelyn to regain her strength. And when Evelyn went out with the baby in her arms, people stopped to admire, to congratulate, to smile. No one saw the woman of rags anymore. They saw a radiant mother, a beloved wife, a respected woman. 3 years after the wedding, on an autumn afternoon, Gabriel closed the shop early. Found Evelyn in the backyard hanging clothes on the line. Thomas, now 2 years old, played in the dirt with wooden blocks his father had made. Evelyn hummed softly. The setting sun illuminated the whole scene with golden light. Gabriel stopped just to watch. That moment, that peace, that family they had built together. Evelyn felt his gaze, turned around, smiled. "What is it?" Gabriel crossed the yard, hugged her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Nothing, just thinking." Thinking about what?" "About how lucky I was to find you, to have looked beyond the rags and seen the queen who was always there." Evelyn turned in his arms, touched his face with tenderness. "You taught me to see myself that way. Before you, I was erased. You brought me back. I only helped you shine, Evelyn. The shine was always yours." They kissed there in the simple backyard, with their son playing at their feet, clothes swaying on the line, the smell of dinner starting to cook. It wasn't a life of wealth, it wasn't a life of luxury, but it was a life of love, of dignity, of purpose. It was everything they needed. Years later, when Thomas grew up and had children of his own, he used to ask his grandmother about how she and his grandfather met, and Evelyn would tell about the rags, about the invisibility, about the man who looked beyond and saw a queen, tell about storms faced together, about love that transforms, about dignity that no one can take away. And she always ended by saying, "Son, learn this. Never judge anyone by appearance. Never treat a person as invisible. Because everyone has value. Everyone deserves to be seen. You just need to have eyes to see beyond the surface." Thomas learned the lesson and passed it to his children. And the story of Evelyn and Gabriel became a legend in the village. A story told on cold nights, a story that warmed hearts, a story that taught about true love, the kind that sees beyond, the kind that transforms, the kind that lasts forever. And in that village in the heartland of Missouri, generations later, people still remembered the woman who wore rags but had the soul of a queen, and the man who knew how to see the truth when all others were blind. Because in the end, it is not clothes that define who we are. It is not wealth. It is not social position. It is the heart. It is inner strength. It is the dignity we carry even when the world tries to break us. And those who know how to see that, those who look beyond the surface, those are the ones who find hidden treasures, find true love, find queens disguised as beggars, find miracles in the most unlikely places. Evelyn and Gabriel lived together until an advanced age. He died first, at 78, sleeping peacefully beside her after a full life. She followed him 3 months later, as if she couldn't live without the man who had taught her to live again. They were buried, side by side. And on the simple tombstone, Gabriel had asked that they write only, "Here lies the man who found a queen, and the queen who loved him forever." And that was how the story ended, not with tragedy, not with bitterness, but with a love that lasted a lifetime, with dignity regained, with invisibility transformed into legacy, because sometimes all we need is someone who looks beyond the rags, someone who sees the queen hidden under the ashes, someone who reminds us that we were always precious, always valuable, always worthy of love. And when we find that person, when we look into the eyes of someone who really sees us, we discover something wonderful. We discover that we were never lost. We were just waiting to be found.